You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shemaiah Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shemaiah Reed.
Welcome back to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today. We have another show lined up for y'all today. Today, we have our special guest, Jan McInnis. She is also known as the Work Lady. And man, you talk about someone who knows comedy. She is hilarious and also a motivational keynote speaker. Her career spans from a comedian and also a former comedy writer. I mean, come on, it's some heavy name. She has some stuff on her resume that will shock you. I mean, you should shock you, should have inspired you. But material has been used by everyone from Jay Leno's Tonight Show monologue to radio, TV, syndicated cartoon strips, guests on Jerry Springer's show. I mean, come on, who doesn't remember that back in the day? I'm not that old, but I'm old enough and young enough to still remember that on TV. But man, you thought that was enough? She also is an author of 2 books, Finding the Funny Fast, How to Create Quick Humor to Connect with Clients, Coworkers, and Crowds, and Convention Comedian, Stories and Wisdom from 2 decades of chicken dinners and comedy clubs. I have to catch my breath because she has even more stuff on her resume. I'm trying to hurry up before it hits 25 minutes in the show. She is also someone who's traveled 20 plus years as a keynote speaker and comedian, sharing her tips and insight how to use humor in business. So obviously she is successful. If you don't want to hear my voice anymore, well, that's okay. That's why we have our guests on the show. Welcome, Jan. How you doing?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it and making me sound really good.
I know 30 minutes later, we're finally doing the show. I have my first question for you. So I want to start from the jump. Can you share with us what got you started into comedy? What inspired you to even explore that?
You know, I wish I could say I was like the class clown, but I was not. As a kid, I just thought, you got to do something for a job, and I thought comedy sounded fun. So I didn't know be helpful to have connections or something like that. So I always thought it would be fun. But I did the whole route, went to college and graduated in communications, and was not really sure what I wanted to do. And I remember the night of graduation, we have the big dinner with the family at the nice restaurant, and I'm looking around at my parents and thinking, now is not the time to tell them I want to be a comedian. So they just spent a lot of money on this degree. So I went into marketing for about 10, 12 years, something like that. And you always have the bug that you just won't go away. And I tried it, had several starts and stops. I got in open mics and got hired and got kind of rolling that way. So, there's obviously people who inspired me and maybe want to do this, but, I really had the bug. I just wanted to see if I could do it, see how far I could take it. So.
Speaking of bugs that won't go away, it's like a mosquito at a summer camp, right?
Yeah.
Just can't get away from it. But What was the first gig experience like? I mean, spill the beans on that.
Okay, so my first, I took a comedy class because I thought you had to take a class, and I got great reviews. The final was you had to do a little 3 minutes in front of the guy who ran the class, his wife and his mother. So, and they loved it. The whole class loved it. They said, "You've got to try this." I didn't do it, but I had the bug, and I went on an open mic, and I entered a comedy competition. Jay Leno at the time had this thing called the Jay Leno Comedy Challenge. He went across all the country to get people to see if they could win this contest to get on stage with Jay Leno to make their career. Every comic at my age and even younger have heard about this contest. It was just huge. I thought, I didn't know anything about comedy, but I'm going to try it. And I didn't get it. I did get in. I got into the ones in the DC areas where I started. I didn't win, but I got named in the local newspaper, and I hadn't done comedy. I mean, I just wrote some jokes and did this, and I was up with professional comedians. And so I gotta try this again. And I got on stage and got kind of freaked out, didn't go back for a few years. Finally, I just did it. I just said, I'm trying this. This is it. I'm going to get this out of my system. And I got on stage at an open mic at the Comedy Cafe in Washington, D.C., and I did great. 3 minutes. I supposed to do 5 minutes. I got to about 3. I forgot the rest of my act. I remember thinking, people are laughing, get off stage. Got off stage, and I got hired right then to open for someone. And it's like, whoa. So all these starts and stops, the bug hit me. And I remember walking out of the club that night thinking, that's it. I don't know how long I'll stay in this day job I've got, but I'm going to do comedy. And I did. I stayed in my job for about 2 more years, and then took the leap. So lots of starts and stops, but when it's something you really want to do and you just can't get rid of it, then you got to go full force. And I thought, let me just see where this takes me. And it's taken me great, really great places.
You've been featured in household name, well-known brands in the media world. So when you look back and reflect on your work, not just as a comedian being funny, but also writing, also, like I say, those 2 books that you have, but much more than that, a keynote speaker as well. So you've been able to try multiple things and do very well.
What's funny is, and you forget about it because it builds over time, over years and years. So you forget about the cool stuff. But just last night, I was talking with a friend who said we were talking about some big event at the Wolf Trap in the Filene Center there in the Virginia area. And I said, "Oh yeah, I played there." And it occurred to me, "Oh wow, that was a big deal." And you forget about the big deals. I mean, that's a huge event. That's like a little less than the Hollywood Bowl out here in Los Angeles. So it kind of builds, and then you look back on your career and you go, wow, I did some amazing things, and I still am doing amazing, fun stuff. I kind of feel like whenever I got an opportunity, if I wasn't sure about it, just go ahead and try it anyway, That's how I got into the writing. I just, I wanted to, I didn't know, nobody said, you're really a good writer, I just said, well, that sounds fun. And I heard Jay Leno used to this is how old this is, he used to give out a fax number to comedians, and they would approve you if you wanted to fax in jokes. And so I did the bold move of calling his office, got his assistant, Lisa, and she gave me the fax number, and I started faxing in topical jokes and started getting them on. And I remember running into one of his writers in the green room out here in Los Angeles at the Comedy Magic Club, and he said, "Oh, Jan McInnis, you're one of the comedians we really read the jokes." And it's like, whoa! So you just forget it because it builds and you build, but you gotta go for it if you really want to do something. You gotta close your eyes sometimes, but then dive in.
I mean, some people close their eyes and no one's there in the audience to laugh. So you have done very well for yourself.
I've done nights too.
When you look at the art of making people laugh, that is a gift. Not anybody can do it. I couldn't imagine being on stage and seeing a crowd frowning at you, right? So how do you overcome those nerves if you had them? And,
I did. Of course I had them, and everyone has them. But first of all, if you want something more than you care about being embarrassed, you can get through some stuff. If you really want it, anything you do, anything, is going to come with embarrassment. It's going to come with hard. It's going to come with roadblocks. You just have to see if you want it that bad. And, of course I had bad nights. I went from, I got hired, I did comedy, and I got moved into what they call one-nighters. I started doing that to pick up extra work. They're like bar gigs. And I got my butt handed to me. I was, these are bar crowds, and I drink beer and I like bars, but they wanted dirtier, edgier stuff, and that wasn't my act. And I learned how to adjust, but I went right into I was working with professional comics too, not just open micers. And that was, within months of me being an open micer. So it was a very steep learning curve. But if you want it bad enough, there's a way to do something in the industry you want to work in. Maybe you won't be the stand-up comedian, but getting over nerves. I mean, they do ask about how. I don't get a ton of nerves right now unless something's not set up right. Then I just get kind of like, oh, come on, I need a mic. I need it. You got to get this set right. And I've been in some big opens for some big people, and things weren't set right. And you're just like, that's what makes me more nervous now, because I know the things you need to get the event to go well. And when you don't have that, that's it. But getting over bombing, I mean, I don't care what comedian, they're lying if they say they haven't bombed. All of us have bombed, You've just got to also focus not on that. I mean, when I tell people in corporate world, now I go around and do a lot of keynotes on using humor in business. And it's not about joke. And that's the biggest thing. Well, what if it bombs? Well, first of all, use your common sense, stay away from hot topics in the corporate world. Comedy clubs do what you want, but corporate world, but also stop focusing on bombing. If you focus, that's where you're going to go. I don't know if you ride motorcycles. I do. And the first thing they teach you, if you focus on wrecking or looking at the ground, you're going to be down there. So whatever you focus on you've got to focus on, okay, that didn't go, keep going. That didn't go, that keep going, and just move on from those bad nights. Find some way to move past. Don't keep beating yourself up. Pick out one or two things that went well. Maybe you liked your outfit, something that went well, and then move on. But I heard a guy who was a billionaire speak once, and he had come over to this country and he's built this billionaire business, and he didn't even speak English when he came over. And he said, if you can take on more problems and headaches and move through those, take on the things people don't want to do, you'll make a lot of money. So kind of the same with comedy. If you can get over the embarrassment, if you can get over, worrying about the negatives of it, you can move on through the positives.
It's funny because, in San Antonio, I'm sure in other cities, it's the same thing. People, they see the exit sign, they're in the wrong lane. They have to cross 4 lanes just to make the exit. I mean, have you ever had the same similar feeling when you're trying to crack a joke and you're like, am I going to make it?
Yeah, well, that's what I do. My act, I don't understand people that can do long stories, because you got to have a good punchline at the end. I do 3 or 4 jokes a minute. So you don't like that, you like this. I like the more Rodney Dangerfield style, you don't like that joke, you like this, move on. But sometimes you have whole nights where it's not working. I don't do a lot of comedy clubs now, so I don't get that. But there are nights when you walk out and it's the same joke sometimes. It's the same, like this one worked 2 nights ago. What happened? What did I do? Something wrong? Did I? Is it the crowd that's not into this joke? It's an odd thing, and sometimes they just stop working.
Once again, let's on Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Jan McInnis. You go to her website, theworklady.com. I have to ask you this question. As a comedian, you know the pain of progress and trying to make it out there is very interesting, because there's a lot of people using online. They're on YouTube, they're on social media, they're putting their stuff out there. What has changed in your opinion as far as opportunity nowadays? Well,
and I would say one big problem that I've heard from the comics out there working in the clubs is people are videotaping you. And if you're trying to do new material or something, that might be the joke that gets out there. And I even have that in keynotes when people start, videotaping me. It's like, no. First of all, your camera is not, I only want to be taped where it's going to, the audio and the video look good. That's not your cell phone. I don't care if you have the cell phone, iPhone 85. I don't want you taping with it. And so I think taping and sort of, because you can spin it and say, oh, look at this famous comedian. They're not really funny. Here's their jokes. But the people watching that aren't in the live event. They don't know that there's only 4 people in the crowd. They don't know that it's 2 a.m. or that this is a brand new 5 minutes, and the comedian might have prefaced it with, hey, I got new material. Not a good idea to do that, because that alerts people that it's jokes. But, you don't know what happened in there. So it's hard to, I think, practicing I don't know how they do it. How do you just slide in now? Like I used to slide in a few new jokes as I do my act. And that was a good way to do it. But if those jokes didn't hit, you're at least buffered with good ones on the side. But now that one bad joke might be the one that hits the internet. So I think that's one of the biggest changes. I think also another change I've heard, people want people have like a 2-minute I'm funny on Instagram for 30 seconds. And they have 1 million people following them. And now you get clubs saying, well, we want this person because they have 1 million followers. They're not funny, and they probably can't stand on a stage in front of a crowd for 45 minutes. So what? They're going to put butts in seats and people are going to show up and see them. They may only do that club once because they're not going to get booked back. But there's a big problem with clubs wanting you to have followers. And I would equate it to... a lot of times sitcom stars, when I was working in clubs a lot, they would come in on their off months and try to do stand-up comedy. And you got road comics. We've been working hard. We know how to do 45 minutes and get the crowd. Well, sitcom star, a lot of them did not have a comedy background, but they thought, well, I've got the name and people are going to show up. Sure, but then they bomb because they cannot follow a road comic. They can't, and they certainly can't hold the stage and be the headliner. So that's kind of equated to the social media stuff now, where people think they're funnier than they are. It's easy to be funny in 30 seconds. Actually, sometimes it's hard, but it's harder. Some people need a little more time than 30 seconds. But, you get time to craft a 30-second or 60-second bit for Instagram. Now you can do it in front of a live audience with all the other factors I'm talking about. People drinking, people getting seated, walking around. Maybe the act in front of you was terrible, or maybe they just killed. And now you got to go out there and, and get the crowd. So you're not getting, I don't think it's a very good training ground, social media, for live comedy. That's my opinion.
And next question I want to ask before I get into your keynote speaking is when you look at television and movies, you see comedy is always some part of the entertainment. My personal taste is the late Bernie Mac. That show on Fox had me in stitches, man. Just relatable. It's a lot of relatable comedy out there as well. Like people going through pain, they use it as a punchline. How do you see TV and film embracing comedians and writers to put that entertainment vibe in there? Well,
I think people want comedy, but in their TV and film, I think those are big sellers. People, don't you just sometimes want to watch a movie or a TV show that just is mindless and doesn't make you think and doesn't make you feel bad or make you cry or something? You just want something funny. And so there's certainly always going to be a need for it. They keep having all these remakes of comedies. Like, can't somebody come up with another premise? I think there's a lot of opportunity for comedians. A lot of comedians do switch over to become actors and actresses, and they get out there, and I think that's perfectly fine. Not a lot of shows for stand-ups to get on stage. It used to be, you did back when Carson was doing it, you did the Johnny Carson show. If he put you on to sit down with him, you were made. You had your career turned on like a switch. And there's not that. There's so much comedy to stand out of the noise. And there's so many TV channels. There are people who are famous on HBO. Well, I don't have HBO. I've got Apple TV. Well, I like these people, but then you see them winning these awards. You're like, who is that? And turns out they had a 5-season spectacular show on HBO,
Well, whoever you need to tap on the shoulder and say, hey, we need to do another, a reality show, a comedian. It's kind of like, let's flip the script on American Idol and have to make it disclaimer. Because, got to be safe on the podcast. But something like that, competition shirts, far and wide in America. Next comedian.
Last Comic Standing is a hit. I don't know if it's still going on, but it was a pretty good hit.
So we need something back in the summer. I think that's what's missing. We need something in the summer and something in the fall.
Yeah. Interesting you say summer, because comedy clubs, a lot of them really cut back in the summer. People don't go out to comedy clubs in the summer because they're outside, and you got the Midwest where it's cold 10 or 9 months out of the year. They're outside. It's very hard to put butts in seats in a comedy club in the summer. So maybe something at night on TV, but.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling. Do it, I'm watching it. So if I see down the road, you producing some show, I'm like, all right, yeah.
All right,
you
good.
did, man.
Yeah, you got to use what, you know what, that's how I got into writing for radio and stuff, because I was writing for, a friend of mine was writing for this prep service, which, I don't know if you know what a prep service is. If you're a disc jockey, you come in the morning at 4 a.m. and you don't have time to do any research. You got to get right on the air. So they subscribe to prep services. They give them the news and jokes and that sort of stuff. And a friend of mine was writing for one. And so I took the plunge and said, hey, I need some credits. I'm moving to LA. I need to, get some credits and maybe a little extra money. And he put me in touch, and that was a hard call because it's hard to use your contacts, hard to ask people for things. But if you're sincere and maybe you have something you can offer that person, it can work out for you.
Once again, listening to I Am Refocused Radio, watching us online, talking to our guest today, Jan McInnis. Go to her website, theworklady.com. Again, that's theworklady.com. On a little bit serious note, let's talk about a keynote that you're famous for, called Bouncing Back. For our listeners, our viewers, kind of explain what is the story behind that and how you use it to motivate people.
Well, I've got two keynotes actually. One is on change, how to use humor to handle change, and the other is bouncing back, handling setbacks like a comedian, and that's on resilience. That's really, I tell a lot of my stories of bombing, of how to get around stuff, how to deal with people, how to deal with, I hate to say the word failure, but things that didn't go the way you want it to go. And so I speak a lot on that, and I speak a lot on change because comedians have seen a lot of change. And we are constantly changing. I took my comedy act and I kind of pulled out parts of it with stories and made them into some fun, engaging keynotes. So
there's a lot of competition. We didn't really talk about that, but when you have to deal with so much people wanting to be in this space, is that something that you ever worry about? Is that something you like, oh, I'm not worried about that, I'm going to stay in my lane? How you do with that?
Like you said, stay in your lane. I mean, you can worry. Any profession, you want to get in and open a car mechanic shop. There are a dozen of them in your area. Do your thing, find your specialty. I did do a lot. I kind of promote myself as clean humor. And I remember working in a comedy club once, and this guy, I was headlining, the guy was featuring, and the first night he said, "I want your job." Okay, well, work at it. And then the rest of the week, he got dirtier and dirtier, trying to bury me. And he didn't. And the end of the week, he said, "I don't understand it. Why I'm going out there with everything I got." And the crowds loved him. He was killing with this dirty stuff. And he goes, you go right out after me and start talking about kids, and it works. Why? And I said, first of all, I want you to stop trying to get me, and go out. And I said, they're hiring me for this job because they see what I bring to the table. They like what I do. Stop trying to get me. You're focused on the wrong thing. Try to just do your thing. Be you. They hire you for you. You don't have to be me. You don't have to be clean. You don't have to be dirty. Be you, and that's why people get famous and people make a living at it, because they want your perspective. They don't want to hear what 50 other people, 100 other people are regurgitating, so.
And that's a perfect segue into talking about corporate, because you also help people understand what some of the biggest issues or mistakes with communications in the workplace. So for our audience, before we sign off here, what's some of the things that you've been able to explore for people in the corporate world?
Well, I just tell them, I talk a lot about how comedians communicate, because, if you're a famous comedian, people go to and they see you, they kind of know what you're going to talk about, right? Nate Bargatze, all these comedians, Kathleen Madigan, they kind of know. But if a comedian like me gets on stage and you don't know anything about me, and I got about 30 seconds to let you know about me and get you laughing, I can't stand up there and tell you all about myself. I have to communicate very succinctly. So I talk about corporate communications, about how, a couple of tips, different tips on how to communicate fast, succinctly, get your message across, and and then I talk about using humor and all the benefits of humor in the workplace. Makes you approachable, makes people want to communicate with you, want to hang out with you. So there's a lot of comedians. Comedians are good leaders. We really are. We command audiences. We handle hecklers. All the stuff people do in the regular job. You have to be in front of people. You have to handle the people that are heckling you. They're not yelling stuff, but they're working behind the scenes to hurt you. You got to handle a lot of stuff. We get our message out. We get people to listen. We do a lot of stuff that can translate very well into leadership positions, and people should pay more attention to how the comedian handles. What do they do when the tray drops, full of drinks? What do they do when this and that happens? What do they do when they're bombing? I mean, look at all the things comedians do. We have a lot of good tips, and we do a lot of things that leaders can certainly use in the workplace.
Well, I don't know where time went, but it's definitely not here anymore. So, unfortunately, we had to have you come back for a part 2 discussion or something. But before we go in, I'm just going to go overtime for the podcast world. So radio are fine. But for the podcast world, bonus question is, when you look back at all the thousands of people you've been able to touch with organizations, you have been able to touch healthcare, education, finance, government, and more. Is there a universal challenge that you've seen over the years that people face?
A universal challenge, I would think, people not listening to them in the workplace. I think people not, too many rules and regulations being put on them by people who aren't actually doing the job. And they, I look at the healthcare people, the education people, and they're handed a whole bunch of new rules every single year by people who are up in some area very far removed from the actual classroom or the actual hospital. And and so they're being overloaded. I think people are being overloaded with stuff. And every industry, when I speak to people, they're really heartfelt. They really want to do a fantastic job. And there's so many hurdles to that. And I think that the management or the industry they're in is making it harder and harder for them to keep their enthusiasm and keep jumping those hurdles.
One last thing, I promise. I know it's going to be like a 10-hour interview, but I can't put this in there. You were featured, like I said, household name media material, but I want to say, brag on it. You've been featured in the Wall Street Journal. I mean, I haven't been there yet. That's amazing.
Oh yeah, that was fun. Yeah, they did a show. They did a article on clean comedians. It's still relevant. And I was in there. Brian Reagan was in there with me. It was me, Brian, 2 or 3 other people. He was a big name. I was not. People were like, "Who's this?" But that was a really cool story. Not just because it was the Wall Street Journal, but because my dad, who's kind of a 9-to-5, corporate kind of guy. I didn't even know the article was coming out. I didn't know. And he called me and said, I opened the Wall Street Journal.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, I love that.
He said, I've never been in this, and you're in the Wall Street Journal. And then the Washington Post was another, they did a little challenge. We'll give you a setup to a dirty joke, and you have to make it clean. Like there was a girl from Nantucket. And so we did the challenge of writing a clean punchline, which was a lot of fun. And then I got a nice article at the Huffington Post on my clean comedy. So.
See, that's a great story. I mean, I'm glad I squeezed that in there for our audience because that's awesome, especially when someone recognizes something that happens to you and they hit you up and say, hey, because nowadays you're lucky if you get a text, I mean, phone calls are like from the 90s. We don't really call no more. We just basically send emails. But one last thing, if you had any advice that you want to give to comedians out there, maybe younger ones who are aspiring to be a comedian one day, what words of wisdom would you share with them as you have been able to be a professional yourself?
I would say be you with the comedy. Be you. Bring your own flair to it. Ignore the noise. Don't jump before you're ready. I mean, I was in the business for a couple of years before I left my day job. And there were people that left it after their day job after being in comedy for a week. Don't do that. But you'll know when it's time to move on. You'll know when you want to go to more with it or less. And you want to back off. But bring your own flair to it. I mean, bring your own perspective, your own thoughts. And what I used to watch a lot of comedy. I don't anymore. I'm getting back into it. But there were years where I watched a lot and then I had to kind of back off. I mean, but if you start now. I mean, I would say start now looking if this is something you want to do, whatever it is, comedy, whatever, start now, because if you wait, all you get is older. It really doesn't change that wanting to do something. So, I wish I'd started right after college, but I was too afraid to anger my parents at our meal. So disappoint my parents, probably more like that.
Oh, that's another conversation. We will leave it there. Because it's already overtime, but I know people are hungry. They want to eat their snacks now, so I'll let y'all get to it. Once again, we've been talking to our guest today, Jan McInnis. Like I always want to say to you, thank you for your time.
Thank you.